Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I'd like to start by just paying huge tribute to my honourable friend, the member for Salisbury, who, after 4.5 years as the Economic Secretary to the Treasury, achieved an enormous amount, and this bill, I think, is testament to his huge commitment. And it was a pleasure dealing with him on so many issues over that period of time. And as a former, having done his job briefly for 1 year, I can absolutely understand what a huge commitment it's been for him. But I'm also torn because I absolutely love the new minister, who I've worked with as a backbencher on many issues in finance. So it's great to be in the chamber and able to contribute to this. So enough of the nice stuff, Madam Deputy Speaker. I think this bill is essential. I think this is one of the big areas that there was so much nonsense talked about in the Brexit debate. You know, oh, the City of London's going to collapse. I remember once going to the Dubai International Conference where Xavier Bettel, the Prime Minister of Luxembourg, said, well, if the UK leaves the EU, then we'll just have the City of London will move to Luxembourg. And I remember thinking in my jet-lagged brain, surely you couldn't fit just over 1 million people in Luxembourg, and the queue for the coffee shop would go down the street. So there was so much nonsense talked. This is absolutely brilliant, and it's long overdue. It's time that we do take control of the City of London and its competitiveness. It is high time it had a competitiveness objective, and that we actually do what we have this perfect opportunity to do, and that is to be the leader in the world in setting out financial regulation and actually in exporting to countries across Asia where people can't get mortgages, they can't get insurance, they can't get all of these sorts of policies that we take for granted being able to buy and regulate in the West. So actually leading regulation around the world in finance is absolutely critical. I also think that the other huge opportunity for the UK is in being the world's leading green finance centre. And my first question for the Minister is, what are we doing about that? Is that in this bill? Because actually, in my view, it will happen. I think that the green industry is going to be an even bigger employer, an even bigger jewel in the crown than the financial services sector in the future. But I'd like to see us seizing this opportunity to make that happen as soon as we can. And secondly, of course, mutual recognition agreements, absolutely vital. And having left the EU, we've got the freedom to do that. But I would like to know from the Minister, how will those MRAs be scrutinised by the House? A technical question. I'm sure there already is an answer to that. And then moving on away from competition, which is at the heart of this, absolutely vital. But moving on to payments, I certainly recall from days on the Treasury Select Committee in 2010 to 2014, and then as City Minister myself, how dire our payment systems are, mainly because they've been around for such a long time and they've been held together and strung together with string and sellotape and sealing wax, and a lot of the fraud that goes on that someone slightly bravely said we should feel sorry for the banks over. Never feel sorry for the banks, but nevertheless, it is, you know, something of their own doing. Is that the ancient payment systems are still very, very clunky, and a lot of the fraud that we see today is as a result of payment systems not being fit for purpose. And again, I would like to understand from the Minister whether there is a requirement anywhere in this bill to improve the payment systems themselves, to make them more robust, to have the banks, the clearing banks in particular, investing in those systems. And then in particular, with new digital currency regulation, how will this interact with fiat money regulation, and what protections will there be for those who unfortunately, perhaps not yet, but in the future will become the victims of scams in the digital money space? How are we going to protect those by fraudsters who will claim, oh, well, I'm regulated by the Bank of England or the FCA? What are we doing about that? Is that being written into this bill? My third area of questioning to the Minister is around access to cash. Back in the day, the big banks, after the financial crisis, wanted to ditch cheques, for example, because they couldn't see the point of those, expensive to administer, when, of course, we, with our constituents, know so many people still to this day rely on cheques. And just recently, my daughter was sent a cheque and was trying to cash it. You literally can't do that unless you go into a bank without, filling it in, taking a photo of it, sending that to the bank, sending it off in an envelope with a stamp, blah, blah, blah. Absolutely ridiculous. There are still so many people who depend on cheques. So what are we doing in this bill to continue to protect access to cheques and, of course, as others have said, access to free cash through ATMs? Those are disappearing at a rate of knots, and whilst as last bank in the town started to close, the post offices have picked up a lot of the slack, but that system is waning, and certainly for small businesses, a lot of the services they need are not available through post offices, and of course it's very difficult to open a new bank account unless you're digitally savvy, other than going to that branch, which can be difficult for older people. So my final point, Madam Deputy Speaker, is about credit unions, and I'm a big fan, always have been. What I love about them is that they teach you to save before you borrow, and like many cooperatives, credit unions have been great at reaching out to schools, teaching young people about the importance of saving and about the fact that money doesn't grow on trees, and so you get into the habit of saving your pocket money before you go out there and start borrowing money for anything. So I would like to know, as has been mentioned before, a lot of government money went into helping ABCUL to create a new proper platform for credit unions. How are they doing? How is the cooperative movement doing? Is there anything in this bill that is really going to support not just those cooperatives, but also vitally financial education in schools? And I'd just like to finish up by saying that it seems to me, whilst financial education is on the national curriculum, it would be so much more valuable to so many young people to know how to open a bank account, what a rental agreement's about, how to fill out a mortgage form or a tax return or a credit agreement, rather than more geometry and the square root of 9. Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker.